The morning the giant jet roared to life, everyone at the airport expected a celebration. Cameras were ready, executives stood proudly, and pilots waited beside the runway. But when the time came to fly, something happened that shocked everyone. The pilots looked at the repaired aircraft, looked at the company owners, and quietly refused to step inside. They all knew one truth that nobody wanted to admit: the man who rebuilt that jet had been betrayed. His name was Kellan Voss, a single father who had spent months bringing a forgotten aircraft back from the dead. He had worked through freezing nights, missed meals, and countless sacrifices, all because he believed that hard work and honesty still meant something. But the same people who begged him to save their $1 million jet were now refusing to pay him a single dollar. Before we begin this emotional journey, if you believe kindness, honesty, and second chances still matter in this world, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Heart Kindness Tales for more inspiring stories. Kellan was not the kind of person people noticed when he walked into a room. He wore old work boots, a faded jacket, and carried the tired look of someone who had been fighting life's battles quietly for years. Every morning before sunrise, he packed a small lunch, kissed his 8-year-old son Rowan on the forehead, and promised him the same thing he always did. One day, things would get better. Life had not always been so difficult for Kellan. Years earlier, he had been one of the best aircraft engineers in the city. He understood machines like they were alive. He could hear a strange sound from an engine and know exactly what was wrong. He could look at a damaged aircraft and see not just broken metal, but a way to bring it back. But after his wife passed away unexpectedly, everything changed. Kellan had to choose between chasing his career and raising his young son alone. He chose Rowan. He left his high-paying job and accepted smaller repair work at local garages. It was not glamorous, but it gave him something money could never buy: time with his son. Still, every month was a struggle. Bills piled up. His old car barely started. Sometimes he skipped dinner so Rowan could have enough food. But whenever Rowan asked why his father looked tired, Kellan smiled and said everything was fine. Then one afternoon, an opportunity appeared. A private aviation company called him with an unusual request. Their largest passenger jet, a massive aircraft that had carried thousands of people across the world, had suffered serious mechanical damage after an emergency landing. Several engineers had inspected it, but nobody wanted to take responsibility for rebuilding it. The company needed someone fearless. They found Kellan. When he arrived at the hangar, he stood silently looking at the damaged aircraft. The jet was enormous, but the damage was worse than he expected. Several systems were destroyed, important components needed replacement, and the cost of repairs was becoming a nightmare for the company. The executives told him they needed the jet flying again within months. Kellan knew the challenge was almost impossible. But then he thought about Rowan's school fees. He thought about the unpaid bills sitting on his kitchen table. He thought about finally giving his son a better life. So he accepted. For the next several months, Kellan practically lived inside that hangar. While the city slept, he worked under bright lights surrounded by metal, wires, and the sound of tools. He repaired systems piece by piece, checking every detail with patience. Other workers laughed at him. They said no single man could rebuild a jet that powerful. But Kellan kept going. Every night when he came home, Rowan would sit beside him and ask questions about the aircraft. He loved hearing his father explain how engines worked and how every small part had an important purpose. One night, Rowan looked at his father's exhausted face and asked why he never gave up. Kellan smiled and answered that sometimes the hardest things in life were the things worth fighting for. Those words stayed with Rowan. Slowly, the impossible started happening. The jet began transforming. The damaged aircraft that once looked hopeless started looking ready for the sky again. The company executives became excited. They imagined headlines about their incredible recovery. They planned a huge event where the world would see their aircraft flying again. But as the final day approached, Kellan noticed something strange. The company started avoiding him. His messages went unanswered. Meetings were cancelled. People who once thanked him stopped looking him in the eyes. Then, just days before the test flight, Kellan received a message from the company's financial department. They claimed the repair had cost more than expected and they were refusing to pay the amount they originally promised. Kellan stared at the message in disbelief. After months of work, they were offering him almost nothing. He rushed to the company office and tried to explain. He showed them his records, his hours, and every repair detail. He reminded them of their agreement. But the executives acted like he was just a worker asking for a favor. They told him the aircraft was already repaired and that he should be grateful for the experience. Those words broke something inside him. Kellan had sacrificed his health, his time with Rowan, and his entire life for that jet. And now they were acting as if his effort meant nothing. He walked out of the building quietly. But the story did not end there. The next morning, the jet was scheduled for its first flight after repairs. Reporters gathered. The executives stood proudly. The runway was clear. Everything was ready. Except the pilots refused to fly. The captain, a respected pilot named Marcel Raines, stepped forward and told the executives that no pilot would risk their life in an aircraft repaired by someone the company had treated unfairly. Everyone was shocked. The executives demanded an explanation. Marcel pointed toward Kellan, who had arrived after hearing what happened. He said everyone in aviation knew one thing: if Kellan Voss rebuilt that aircraft, it was safe. But if the company could betray the person who saved the jet, nobody knew what else they were willing to ignore. The pilots stood together. No one moved toward the aircraft. For the first time, the company realized their mistake. The same man they tried to disrespect was the only reason their jet was standing on the runway. News spread quickly. Workers, engineers, and even former employees began speaking up about Kellan's dedication. They shared stories of how he stayed late to help others and how he never complained. The company's reputation started falling apart. The executives finally understood that they had underestimated the one person who had the most value. They called Kellan back. This time, they did not speak to him like a worker. They spoke to him like the person who had saved everything. They offered him the full payment he deserved, along with a public apology. Kellan listened quietly. Then he looked at the aircraft. He remembered the nights he spent repairing it. He remembered Rowan waiting for him at home. He remembered every moment he almost gave up. He accepted the payment, but he asked for something else. He wanted the company to create a training program for young mechanics who had talent but no opportunity. The executives were surprised. After everything they had done, Kellan was thinking about helping others. That was the kind of person he was. Months later, Kellan's life changed completely. He no longer struggled to pay bills. He opened a small aviation workshop where young people learned from him. And every morning, Rowan visited the workshop before school. One day, Rowan asked his father if he was angry about what happened. Kellan looked at the aircraft models hanging on the wall and smiled. He said that life would always have people who try to take advantage of kindness, but that should never become a reason to stop being kind. Because sometimes the world notices the person who keeps doing the right thing, even when nobody is watching. Years later, whenever that famous jet flew across the sky, people remembered the story behind it. They remembered the single father who rebuilt it. The man who was denied payment. The man who was underestimated. The man who proved that true value cannot be measured by a contract or a paycheck. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness, patience, and integrity still matter, please support this video by liking, sharing, and subscribing to Heart Kindness Tales. Your support helps more stories like this reach people who need them. And before the story ends, leave a comment with the words, "Kindness always wins," because your comment may inspire someone else who is going through a difficult time. Because sometimes the person everyone ignores is the person holding everything together.